This is Julien Icham. I'm back with Francie Mackey live on the phone. And I'd just like to remind people, if you're by the shortstop on Highland and Sterling, please say how mean it was that they sold us a dead phone card. So how are you doing, Mr. Mackey?
Doing very well, thank you very much, Julian.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization.
Yeah, I'm a national chairperson here in Ireland of the 32 County Sovereignty Movement. It's an organisation that was set up almost 20 years ago this year, in 1997, in the lead up to the Good Friday Agreement. There was negotiations with provisional Sinn Féin and the British government that led to the partition of our country being more entrenched than it had been, and the sovereignty of the Irish nation was clear that it was going to be violated. So in that context, the 32 County Sovereignty Movement was born out of like-minded Republicans who stood against the direction that republicanism was taken, and that to challenge the protagonists of that process in where they were taking republicanism to normalising British rule in Ireland. So we were formed in November of 1997, and we set about developing a strategy to advance our position. And that brought us through 1998 with us lodging a challenge to the British government of the United Nations, which is the only challenge in existence against British rule in Ireland. That's a brief history of how we were formed.
Since its founding, what role did the 32 County Sovereignty movement play in the present Republican politics?
Well, I suppose the primary role of the 32 County Sovereignty movement in current Republican politics is actually a dual role. One is upholding our right to national sovereignty in international law via our UN submission, which I've just alluded to, and also working in tandem with other Republican individuals and groups to build a Republican unity based on consensus. The United Nations submission, as I said, is the only legal challenge to British rule in Ireland, and it's the only challenge in existence. And its importance is twofold. Firstly, it bases the Republican struggle on inalienable national rights which cannot be subverted for political expedience. And secondly, it's a legal challenge which can be adopted and supported without any political preconditions. And we view it as a contemporary hub around which a unified Republican base can build a credible policy platform to advance our political objectives. And the 32 County Sovereignty Movement are currently working closely with other groups and individuals to put in place a political strategy with as broad a consensus as possible. And there are many facets to this process, and each needs to be worked on carefully and patiently. Steady progress has been made, but given the nature of it and the balances that are required, details of it are not being disclosed at this point in time, but hopefully in the near future that will be disclosed.
Right on. Sorry to jump in there, Francis. My name's Aaron. I'm also one of Julian's, helpers here. Essentially, one of the questions I have was, essentially with the whole, turmoil of the whole Brexit crap and, that whole struggle of whatever they're going on with that. What do you really see if the real Republicans play, and what role do you think you guys play in the post-Brexit Ireland?
Okay, well, Brexit challenges everyone in different ways, but for Republicans and for us in the 32 county sovereignty movement, the challenge is to be politically prepared when the issue of national sovereignty will once again be at the top of the political agenda. The border will be made manifest once again, and that will strip away any confusion, and it will strip away the so-called All-Ireland architecture of the Good Friday Agreement.
Right.
Stormont will once again be seen to be nothing more than a British regional administration within part of the United Kingdom.
Right.
And I think it's very important to note that Provisional Sinn Féin collapsed the institutions in recent weeks, and it's coming across as if it's some form of corruption from unionism and based on a heating scheme scandal. Nothing could be further from the truth. With the Good Friday Agreement dead, the Sinn Féin strategy will be exposed as impotent on Irish unity. Therefore, the objective in all of this was to have the institutions collapsed prior to the British government triggering Article 50 to commence the process of exiting the European Union. Now, that leaves Ireland in a position where now it has two imperial borders, one British and one European.
Yeah, exactly. Coming on both fronts.
This has exposed the flaws, which we said at the time in 97 and in 1998. We said that this internal relationship and this internal agreement could not work. And that has proven time and time again with the various collapses of the Stormont administration in the intervening years. So what we now have is it collapsed again, and we have elections next week and Sinn Féin are saying, well, that doesn't mean they're going back into Stormont. There has to be this and this type of conditions. But the reality is Sinn Féin are being exposed in all of this as being impotent on the question of Irish unity and on the question of upholding the sovereignty of the Irish people.
Well, exactly.
But I think it's also important to look a bit wider in the United Kingdom sense, because the Brexit issue also has a huge bearing on the issue of Scottish independence.
Yeah, exactly.
And the breakup of the United Kingdom. So if Scotland decides to vote to leave the UK, the position of the occupied 6 counties within the UK will have no value in our terms for Westminster. And that could well initiate some form of long-term process of disengagement, but we can't take the British for granted on this because they are masters at controlling issues like this. And this
exactly.
is why
they've done it for so long, they're already in control.
Republican base, a credible Republican strategy is put in place, and I've alluded to that to the previous question. It's important that the Republican base has a proper strategy in place to address these potentially massive constitutional changes that may take place, and our position would be back once again at the top of the political agenda.
And how would you say like all that, all the current occupation problems, like how would you say that it directly affects everyday Irish lives to the point of, where it needs to be an organized, unified voice of we're not standing for this anymore. We can't take this in our daily life.
Yes. The impact of the current occupation in everyday life is something that has been and has followed similar patterns to that of any occupied country. And in Ireland, the border between the occupied 6 counties and the 26 counties is always present. However, within the European Union, the border became less obvious because there was free trade, free travel, and all of that. Brexit now will make that all the more apparent. And we may well go back to a situation what the media and the government are classifying as hard or soft borders, but that's not relevant whether it's hard or soft. It only makes it more apparent as people are passing through it. But what's going to happen, as I said earlier, there's going to be two imperial borders, a British and a European one. And also on the nature of our everyday lives, the whole issue of the occupation is such that injustice is an ongoing aspect of it. The so-called justice system is designed to convict Irish men and women under special legislation. You know, there is no judges. There's a diplomat court, evidence, flimsiest of evidence to make a conviction is there. The corruption and the decision making,
And would
ensure
you
conviction and jail sentences.
and
And all of this is inextricably linked to the overall justice system, which includes policing and the policing service. So policing then becomes political.
Yeah, and would you see it as basically a witch hunt for anyone who were to raise their voice against it, specifically targeting them?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. For any grouping or individuals involved in groups who stand against the establishment in upholding the sovereignty of the Irish nation, they are targeted on a daily basis in so-called stop and search legislation, and that's a routinely done daily on a daily basis. On a daily basis, and if one fails to comply with all of the requests that are made under the stop and search, they then are charged with some spurious allegation of failing to cooperate with police or disorderly behaviour. There's all sorts of spurious claims made then, and the person is brought along to court. The evidence is given by this corrupt police officers, and the outcome then is in the corrupt judicial system. So we don't expect much justice when the greatest injustice of all is the occupation, and the system is designed to protect British interests. It's designed to protect the occupation. Therefore, our interests are secondary, and we're effectively second-class citizens in our own country, because the judicial system does whatever is necessary to ensure that the establishment is protected. And prime examples of this has come up over the years, throughout the last 30, 40 years, none more so than the murder of Solicitor Pat Finucane, whose family continue to work within the system to try to get justice and to try to establish the truth in the murder of Pat Finucane. And it's widely believed that this talented solicitor and lawyer, in defending Irish citizens, he was made a target by the British government, and he was subsequently murdered. And whilst there's no murder today, nevertheless the system continues to protect the British interests. And we have more recently the situation of a British Secretary of State revoking the licence of Tony Taylor in Derry, and he was incarcerated in jail again on the say-so of a British politician. He doesn't get one vote in this country, and this is the type of things that we're up against on a continual basis, where the judicial system is being propped up by British policing system under the terms of the Good Friday Agreement, and effectively the RUC haven't went away. It's just been a name change to PSNI, but it doesn't matter what they're called, because in an occupation like ours, they're there to serve the interest of the British government.
So my next question, since you brought up Tony Taylor, is what is internment and what role does it play in silencing a real dialogue on the current political situation in Ireland?
Yes, well, internment's been around for as long as the occupation itself, and it has taken many forms. It used to be you were lifted and interrogated, tortured, and held for whatever length of time without any process, and various courts at an international level, European particularly, then made decisions and exposed this whole issue of internment, that it was wrong, that torture was wrong, and all of that. So what has replaced it is something more subtle, but it's still the same thing, and that's a person being held on remand, and that's where a person is arrested on some spurious charge or other. And there may not be any specific evidence against it. It could be as simple as the word of a senior police officer saying this person's a membership of an illegal organisation. Nevertheless, that person is removed from their families, from their communities, and put in jail. And out of that came the term internment by remand. and that has a person can on remand in custody. The length of that could, if for that judicial process to take place, could be 2.5, 3 years. So this individual was just a charge against him, remains in jail for 2.5 to 3 years, and not found guilty of anything. And at the end of that process, some people have been released. There was no evidence to stand over the serious nature of the charge against them. In other cases, the corrupt judicial system then would give them a sentence and whatever and all of that. But the point of internment is that it's designed to intimidate the population, intimidate people from standing up against the establishment, to intimidate the people from challenging establishment, to intimidate people for upholding the sovereignty and their sovereign rights.
And that's the scary thing, like, and especially to hear you talk about that, it just reminds me of, like scenes in movies where, the black bag goes over your head and, you're gone for 2 years out of your life for simply having beliefs or, standing up for, your sovereignty, from where you're from.
Oh, absolutely, and it's designed totally to intimidate, so that people don't stand up to challenge any of the injustice that's going on, and it's designed to take people away from the Republican project, and it's in place to attempt to normalize British rule in our society, and as you say, silence the opposition to it,
Okay. One, but
I was wondering, my name's Don. I'm also with Julien here. What is political policing and what role does it play in Irish politics?
just one sec.
So it seems that the phone cut out. We're going to go to a song, and it's fitting. We're going to play the Ballad of Alan Ryan, and we'll see if we can get Francie back on. If not, that's fine. The reason we're playing the Ballad of Alan Ryan is it's a 1-year anniversary of the assassination of Vinnie Ryan, who was the brother of Alan Ryan, who was murdered in front of his wife and kids, and it was quite sad that this happened last year. So we're playing this song as a tribute to Vinny, who was basically was like a proxy execution. It was an execution done by drug dealers under the watchful eye of the Free State. So, yeah, this is almost the 1 year anniversary of his death, and we will be doing something. Oh, there's a phone. That must be Mr. Francie Mackey back on the line. We'll play the Ballad of Alan Ryan after we finish this. So, what is what is political policing in Ireland?
Yes, the whole issue of political policing in Ireland is linked very closely to the whole judicial system, and we have a situation whereby the police operate under special legislation whereby they can use special powers to stop and to search, and as I said previously, a system to protect British interests, and I referred to the whole judicial system to do whatever it is to protect the establishment. And I referred to the Craigavon 2 and the Tony Taylor situation in relation to all of that. But I think that the whole issue of policing, the special powers that give to policing, whereby they stop and search on a daily basis, intimidate anyone who stands up to uphold their sovereignty, who stands against the establishment on any issue. The whole issue of policing is political, and that those people will be targeted on a daily basis in relation to as they go about their daily lives. We have situations where mothers on their way to school, their children being searched, babies in prams being searched, all designed to silence any opposition to anyone who challenges the system. So in that context, all policing in an occupied country like ours is designed to be political, and is political in the protection of the establishment.
And and with the with the population going to the prisons, going to the jails, pretty much for all BS reasons, and obviously political prisoners. What kind of stuff is going on around organization? Around organization of prisoner support, prisoner aid,
and what's happening right now in Montgomery specifically in terms of the issues between the screws and the prisoners.
Yeah. Well, I don't have an updated figures in relation to the numbers, but as you said, in Montgomery there are certainly political prisoners of war in Montgomery jail, and some are interned on remand, some are awaiting sentencing, some are sentenced with unsafe practice and unsafe evidence on their which is designed to hold people in the jail. The Craigavon 2 situation, where Brenton McConville and John Paul Wooden are sentenced prisoners, nevertheless, all of the evidence is pointing that this was an unsafe sentencing, and I'm talking about legal people who are coming out and saying this was an unsafe sentencing, that the evidence is not there or has not been there to convict John Paul Wooden and Brenton the convent. However, the corruption of the judicial system and the nature of non-jury courts, leaving the outcome to judges, leaves us in a position that these unsafe sentencing and practices and outcomes will continue. Situation of Tony Taylor, something similar. He languishes in jail, removed from his family, and he, on the word of a British Secretary of State. So that is the examples of it. The situation in the jail itself then is one of continuous tension, because being political prisoners, the prisoners themselves have fought very hard for special status, that they're not criminals, and that they're in jail because of corruption. They're in jail because of a corrupt system that has put them in jail, and they're in jail because their country has been occupied by a foreign government. So all in all, these prisoners then become the brunt of a prison administration who are hostile to their politics, and the prison system then has a regime of constraint, whereby normal association with each other is prohibited, except at given times. Freedom of movement, and of course, strip searching is something that's ongoing. So all of these things are clearly violations of the individual's human rights, but nevertheless they're allowed to continue within this prison system here in occupied Ireland. And a number of welfare groups from various bodies have been involved in highlighting all of this and taking it to wherever they can with very little success. And going back a number of years, there was an agreement that was accepted by the prisoners in relation to the regime of their everyday living arrangements. And of course, the prison administration reneged on that agreement and reverted back to the old system of torture and violation of the individual's rights.
Okay, my name's Donald here, Francis. I'm just wondering what do you see happening to move forward the struggle right now?
Yeah, I think that the future of Irish republicanism and moving it forward, and I've alluded to it earlier when I was covering the question on the current Republican politics and where the 32 county sovereignty movement is. We're firm believers in working in unity of purpose with other Republican groupings, and there is a factionalized Republican base in Ireland, and I suppose there's various reasons for all of that. That there's different types of models of organisations, whether it's political party model or revolutionary model or whatever. What we're seeing is, and I think this is starting to be accepted across the board, that the violation of Irish national sovereignty, which we set out to uphold in 1997, that now appears to be accepted across the political spectrum here of republicanism, that sovereignty is the issue, that the violation of sovereignty by a foreign government is the issue. And I suppose it's the extension then, interpretation of the word sovereignty in relation to everyday living and making it relevant to contemporary Ireland to develop the strategies around that. And I believe that the whole issue of working closer with other Republican groups and individuals to put in place that political strategy, to put in place all of that, that you would have a situation whereby, based on consensus, that we would have unity of purpose. And I refer specifically to last year, the centenary year of 1916 Rising. The 2 years prior to that, Republicans, including the 32 County Sovereignty Movement, got together and we built, based on consensus, an organisation or an organised approach to how we were going to commemorate the centenary. And we had one of the largest marches through Dublin on Easter Monday last year to add on to Arbor Hill, the burial place of the 1916 leaders. And the success of that, obviously, has bred a lot of interest and brought a lot of interest across the various groups on maintaining the momentum of that working together. And as I said earlier, we're now involved in the whole aspect of putting in place a political strategy with as broad a consensus as possible, and working carefully and patiently with other groups. And we believe that there has been steady progress this year so far, and that will be developed into a situation where hopefully sooner rather than later that the nature of that strategy would be disclosed. But at this point in time, it's in progress, a work in progress.
All right. Another question. We're not over there, so what can we do to help over here with that struggle?
Yeah, and I think from what I see, that there is a support base developing at an international level, and it's all down to some good work being done in areas like yours. And I would ask that you would continue with that good work in not alone giving us the airtime and support, but that we we ask that you lobby other groupings and governments to uphold the Irish people's rights, to their sovereignty, and that you would support our challenge against the British government's violation of our rights and the violation of our sovereignty, and that you would support our challenge at the United Nations, that you would lobby governments and groupings based on our position in garnering that support for a struggle like ours here in Ireland. And we believe it's important that you continue to highlight the injustices of British rule in Ireland. And I suppose on that note, I would like to say thank you very much for that support, and thank you for having me on your programme to get our message out across the world, and to ask you to continue to keep yourselves informed of our plight, and to stand against all forms of imperialism.
Well,
like you said earlier, Brexit in the UK will impose two imperial borders in Ireland, one British and one European. So it's important that our position and that of the Republican base and the Irish people, that our views are heard. It's an alternative view to the establishment view, and we believe that the validity of our position based on sovereignty is one that is most important to all of the Republican groupings and to the Irish people generally. The Irish people generally are panicked about what's going to happen following Brexit, but the European, the island of Ireland is best served either all in or all out. It just cannot have this British imposed border, which takes the occupied area out of Europe, the 26 in Europe, and then that leaves us all on second-class Irish citizens.
Okay, so just to wrap things up, I'll give you a second to give your final thought. But a friend of ours who's sitting here attended a Palestinian meeting yesterday, and he just wants to pass on just the message of solidarity from you, if you can. So it'll be quick. So he'll say that, and then full final thoughts.
My name is Freddie Barsoum.
Indeed, and we very much appreciate the expression of solidarity from a Palestinian representative, and we have, as we have in the past, continue to extend our solidarity to the plight of the Palestinian people. And we would hope that could be brought to an early resolution. Sadly, it hasn't been, and like our own conflict, it has resulted in death, it has resulted in murder, it has resulted in the Palestinian people being treated disgracefully. So, like our own struggle, my final thoughts are that we continue to pursue our agenda, that we continue to pursue our work based on upholding Irish national sovereignty and making that position relevant to the everyday lives of our people in Ireland. And we are going through great austerity with more to come in the occupied area. Also in the 26 counties, the mishandling of wealth and resources in Dublin is such that there is a disgraceful situation has developed with the level of poverty, homelessness, and all of that in Dublin, and mainly evident in areas like Dublin and centres of population. But we know that it's right across the country, and that more and more people are becoming marginalised and removed because of this capitalist system of governance that exists. So once again, thank you, Julien, and thank your people in Canada for the support that you've shown to us over the past years, and we hope to have and develop a stronger working relationship as we move forward.
He said it.